Ever wonder why your ancestors lived to the ripe old age of 30? Well, turns out they were onto something terrifying that actually worked. Picture this. You've got a splitting headache, so naturally, you drill a hole in your skull. Your wound won't heal. Time to slap some moldy bread on it. Feeling a bit under the weather? Let's just drink some mercury, shall we? Before you roll your eyes and click away, here's the kicker. These nightmare fuel treatments had legitimate scientific merit. And modern science is finally catching up to explain why our ancestors weren't completely insane, just mostly insane. Let's get right into it, because today we're counting down the most horrifying ancient medical practices that somehow, against all odds, actually saved lives. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for number 3. It involves maggots, and it's absolutely disgusting. But first, smash that like button if you're ready to have your mind blown by some seriously twisted medical history. Number 10. Trepanation, the original brain surgery. Some genius in 6500 BCE looked at someone with a headache and thought, you know what? Let's drill a hole in their skull. And somehow, this wasn't considered attempted murder. Trepanation involved using stone tools to literally bore holes into living skulls, supposedly to release evil spirits, bad blood, or whatever cosmic force was giving you migraines. The patient would be fully conscious during this delightful procedure, because anesthesia wouldn't be invented for another 8,000 years or so. Here's where it gets weird. Archaeological evidence shows that many patients actually survived this barbaric brain surgery. Skulls have been found with clear signs of healing around the holes, meaning people lived for years afterward. Modern neurosurgeons are scratching their heads. Well, not literally drilling holes in them, trying to figure out how this worked. Modern science confirms trepanation had scientific merit. It relieved intracranial pressure from brain injuries, hematomas, and infections. It's basically the same principle we use today for emergency craniotomies, except now we use sterile environments instead of a cave and actual surgical tools instead of sharpened rocks. The success rate was probably around 50 to 90%, depending on the skill of the surgeon, which is honestly better odds than you'd expect from someone whose medical degree came from the University of Trial and Error. So the next time you complain about a headache, just remember, at least nobody's suggesting we break out the power drill. Yet, speaking of barbaric practices, our next one involves an infestation you definitely don't want to get. Number 9. Maggot therapy, nature's cleanup crew. This revolting method was unexpectedly life-saving when antibiotics were still a twinkle in Alexander Fleming's eye. Civil War surgeons noticed something peculiar. Soldiers whose wounds were crawling with maggots healed faster and had lower infection rates than those with clean wounds. Instead of being horrified like any sane person would be, these medical pioneers thought, hey, let's put more bugs in there. The science behind this nightmare fuel is actually brilliant. Maggots are incredibly picky eaters. They only consume dead, infected tissue while leaving healthy flesh completely alone. They're like tiny, gross, biological surgeons with an appetite for gangrene. Plus, their digestive secretions contain natural antibiotics and growth factors that actively promote healing. Modern medicine has brought maggot therapy back from the dead, pun intended. Today's medical maggots are specially bred in sterile conditions and are FDA approved for treating diabetic ulcers, pressure sores, and other stubborn wounds. They're literally prescription maggots. Imagine explaining that to your insurance company. The success rate is around 80 to 95% for clearing infected tissue, which is better than many modern surgical debridement techniques. So basically, our ancestors figured out biological wound care centuries before we invented the term biological wound care. Talk about being ahead of their time, in the most disgusting way possible. Now, here's where things get really twisted, because what we've covered so far is nothing compared to what's coming up. Have you ever wondered if there's an ancient cure so bizarre that even modern doctors are afraid to admit it works? Now that you've got maggots on the brain, let's move on to something a little more palatable. But not by much. Number 8. Willow bark, the original painkiller. Your great-great-great-grandmother had a killer migraine, so she chewed on some tree bark like a deranged beaver. Sounds crazy. Modern studies show her tree snack was chemically effective. For over 4,000 years, ancient civilizations from Egypt to Greece were gnawing on willow bark to treat pain, fever, and inflammation. The bitter, horrible-tasting bark was their go-to remedy for everything from headaches to arthritis. Imagine explaining to your modern doctor that your pain management plan involves eating trees. Here's the mind-blowing part. Willow bark contains salicin, which your body converts into salicylic acid. Sound familiar? That's because salicylic acid is the active ingredient in aspirin. In 1838, scientists finally isolated this compound, and by 1897, Bayer had turned it into the little white pills we pop today like candy. The ancient Egyptians were essentially taking aspirin 4,000 years before we figured out how to synthesize it in a lab. They documented its use in medical papyri, recommending willow bark tea for reducing fever and treating inflammatory conditions. Modern studies show that willow bark extract is about 15% as effective as aspirin for pain relief. Not bad for something you can literally pick off a tree. The irony: we spent centuries trying to improve on nature, only to discover that our ancestors had already cracked the code. They just had to deal with the taste of chewing bark instead of swallowing a convenient little tablet. Sometimes the old ways really are the best ways. They just taste absolutely awful. From a tree to a swamp, our next ancient remedy is a real bloodsucker. Number 7. Leeches, vampire medicine. Nothing screams advanced medical care quite like having blood-sucking worms attached to your body. But before you judge, these slimy little vampires were performing medical miracles when doctors still thought diseases were caused by bad air. Medieval physicians used leeches for bloodletting. The brilliant theory that most illnesses could be cured by draining the patient's blood until they were basically anemic. The logic was that removing bad blood would restore the body's natural balance. Spoiler alert, this killed a lot of people, including George Washington, who was essentially bled to death by his well-meaning doctors. But here's where it gets interesting. Modern medicine has brought leeches back, and they're saving lives in ways our ancestors never imagined. Medical leeches are now FDA approved and are routinely used in microsurgery, particularly for reattaching severed fingers, toes, and even ears. The magic happens in their saliva, which contains over 100 different bioactive compounds, including hiridin, one of the most powerful natural anticoagulants ever discovered. When surgeons reattach a body part, restoring blood flow is critical, but sometimes the tiny veins become congested with blood. Leeches act like living, breathing blood thinners, preventing dangerous clots while promoting healthy circulation. Success rates for microsurgery with leech therapy can be 85 to 95% compared to 60 to 70% without them. These little bloodsuckers are literally the difference between keeping your finger and losing it forever. Modern medical leeches are specially bred, sterile, and used only once, because apparently even vampire worms deserve proper hygiene standards. And if you thought leeches were creepy, wait until you hear about the next one. Number 6. Honey, sweet medicine. Your ancient ancestors looked at bee vomit and thought, you know what? This would make excellent wound dressing. And somehow they were absolutely right. Honey has been used medicinally for over 4,000 years across virtually every ancient civilization. The Egyptians used it for wound care, the Greeks for digestive issues, and pretty much everyone else for whatever was bothering them at the time. Ancient medical texts describe honey as a cure-all for everything from eye infections to digestive problems. Here's why this sticky sweetness actually works. Honey is a biological warfare agent disguised as a delicious treat. It has natural antibacterial, antifungal, and anti-inflammatory properties that make it incredibly effective for wound healing. The low pH and high sugar content create an environment where harmful bacteria literally cannot survive. But wait, there's more. Honey also contains hydrogen peroxide, which is released slowly as it comes into contact with wound fluids. It's like having a gentle, time-released antiseptic that doesn't damage healthy tissue. Plus, it promotes the growth of new tissue and reduces scarring. Basically, it's nature's Neosporin with better reviews. Medical-grade honey, particularly Manuka honey from New Zealand, is now used in hospitals worldwide for treating burns, surgical wounds, and diabetic ulcers. Studies show it can be more effective than traditional antibiotic treatments for certain types of wounds, with healing rates improved by 30 to 50%. So the next time you're putting honey in your tea, just remember, you're basically drinking liquid medicine that's been clinically proven for 4,000 years. Our ancestors were ahead of the game. They just didn't have the peer-reviewed studies to prove it. Now here's a question that's going to make you uncomfortable. If these ancient barbaric treatments actually work better than some modern medicine, what does that say about our current healthcare system? Are we overthinking simple solutions while people suffer from treatable conditions? We've covered bugs and bloodsuckers, but what about a side of mold? Number 5. Moldy bread accidental antibiotics. Picture this. You've got a nasty infection, and your ancient healer's brilliant solution is to slap some fuzzy, green bread on your wound. You'd probably think they've lost their mind, until the infection actually disappears. Ancient Egyptians, Chinese, and various European folk healers were using moldy bread as medicine thousands of years before Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in 1928. They noticed that certain types of mold seemed to prevent infections and help wounds heal faster. Of course, they had no idea why it worked, This fungal fix had undeniable therapeutic value, centuries before penicillin, for people who thought the heart controlled thoughts. The science is absolutely mind-blowing. Some bread molds, particularly Penicillium species, produce natural antibiotics as a defense mechanism against bacteria. When ancient healers applied moldy bread to wounds, they were essentially creating a primitive antibiotic treatment. The mold would kill off harmful bacteria while allowing the wound to heal naturally. Modern research has confirmed that certain bread molds can be as effective as commercial antibiotics against specific bacterial strains. Studies have shown success rates of 70 to 85% for treating minor skin infections using controlled mold extracts. The problem? Not all molds are created equal. Some can be deadly toxic, which is why ancient healers probably killed as many patients as they saved through trial and very deadly error. Fleming's accidental discovery of penicillin? He basically rediscovered what bread-eating peasants had known for centuries, except he figured out how to do it safely and consistently. Sometimes the most revolutionary discoveries are just old knowledge with better quality control. And if you thought moldy bread was a bad idea, wait until you hear what's next. Number 4. Mercury, liquid death medicine. This one's going to make your skin crawl. For over 2,000 years, doctors prescribed mercury. Yes, the toxic liquid metal that can literally poison you to death as medicine for everything from syphilis to constipation. And here's the absolutely insane part. It sometimes actually worked. Ancient Chinese alchemists, Islamic physicians, and European doctors all used mercury compounds to treat various diseases, particularly syphilis. Patients would undergo salivation therapy, where they'd be given mercury until they started drooling uncontrollably, a sign that the treatment was working. The side effects? Oh, just minor things like kidney failure, brain damage, tooth loss, and death. Typical Tuesday stuff for medieval medicine. But here's where it gets complicated. Mercury compounds actually do have antimicrobial properties. Mercury can kill bacteria, fungi, and even the spirochetes that cause syphilis. In an era before antibiotics, mercury treatment was literally the only option for syphilis patients, and many did survive the disease, assuming they survived the treatment first. The success rate was terrifyingly low. Maybe 20 to 30% of patients would be cured of syphilis, while the rest would either die from mercury poisoning or suffer permanent neurological damage. It's like playing Russian roulette with chemistry, except 5 chambers are loaded instead of 1. Modern medicine has completely abandoned mercury treatments because we discovered antibiotics that can kill bacteria without slowly murdering the patient. But the principle was sound. Our ancestors correctly identified that toxic substances could kill disease-causing organisms. They just hadn't figured out the whole therapeutic window concept where the medicine doesn't kill you along with the disease. It's a horrifying reminder that sometimes the cure really is worse than the disease. We've reached the top 3, and trust me, it gets even more twisted from here. Number 3, cauterization, burning your problems away. Nothing says advanced medical procedure, quite like heating up a metal rod until it's red hot and then pressing it directly into human flesh. But before you pass out from just imagining the pain, this barbaric practice was actually saving lives when infection meant certain death. Ancient surgeons from Egypt to medieval Europe used cauterization, basically controlled burning, to seal wounds, stop bleeding, and prevent infections. They'd heat iron rods, bronze instruments, or even animal horns until they were literally glowing, then apply them directly to wounds, amputated limbs, or infected areas. The screaming was substantial. The logic was actually sound, even if the execution was absolutely brutal. High heat kills bacteria, viruses, and fungi on contact, while simultaneously sealing blood vessels to prevent bleeding. It's essentially sterilization and hemostasis rolled into one agonizing procedure. Ancient physicians noticed that cauterized wounds healed faster and were less likely to become infected compared to wounds that were simply bandaged. Modern studies have shown that controlled thermal therapy can achieve 99.9% bacterial kill rates within seconds of application. The success rate for preventing post-surgical infections using cauterization was probably around 80 to 90%, which is remarkably high for medieval medicine. The problem? The procedure was so painful that many patients died from shock before the benefits could kick in. Today we use electrocautery, basically the same principle, but with electricity instead of fire, and with anesthesia, so you don't experience the full medieval torture experience. Surgeons still burn tissue to seal blood vessels and remove diseased areas. We just do it with precision instruments instead of red-hot pokers. Your ancestors were basically performing microsurgery with blacksmith tools, and somehow making it work. Alright, now for a truly horrifying contender. Brace yourself for this one, because we're about to discuss the most disgusting medical practice that somehow, impossibly, had legitimate therapeutic benefits. Ancient physicians looked at human urine and thought, you know what? Let's drink this, and also bathe in it, and definitely rub it on wounds. Number 2. Urine therapy, the golden medicine. For over 5,000 years, civilizations across the globe, from ancient Rome to traditional Chinese medicine to Aztec healers, prescribed urine for everything from wound cleaning to tooth whitening to treating plague. Roman soldiers would urinate on battle wounds for disinfection. Aztec priests used it to treat skin conditions. Even Cleopatra allegedly bathed in urine for its supposed anti-aging properties, though historians debate whether this improved her complexion or just made her really unpopular at parties. Here's the absolutely insane scientific reality. Fresh human urine is actually sterile when it leaves a healthy person's body. It contains urea, which breaks down into ammonia, a compound with genuine antibacterial and antifungal properties. Urine also contains trace amounts of hormones, antibodies, and other bioactive compounds that can have therapeutic effects. Modern research has confirmed that urea-based treatments can be effective for certain skin conditions, with success rates of 60 to 80% for treating eczema and psoriasis. Pharmaceutical companies now synthesize urea for use in medical creams and ointments. So basically, your ancestors were rubbing medicine on their skin. It just happened to come from their bladders instead of a pharmacy. The ammonia content also explains why urine was effective for cleaning wounds and preventing infections. It's like nature's own antiseptic, packaged in the most psychologically disturbing delivery system imaginable. Ancient healers stumbled onto legitimate antimicrobial therapy. They just had to overcome the obvious ick factor that comes with drinking your own bodily fluids. Number 1. Fecal transplants, ancient gut health revolution. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, or maybe dreading. Hold on to your stomach, because the number 1 most horrifying ancient cure that actually works is eating poop. Yes, you heard that correctly. Eating human poop. Ancient Chinese physicians in the 4th century were prescribing yellow soup, a delightful cocktail made from human feces mixed with water, to treat severe diarrhea and digestive disorders. They called it golden syrup, or yellow dragon soup, because apparently giving it appetizing names would make patients forget they were literally consuming excrement. The logic seemed absolutely insane at the time. If someone has severe digestive problems, the solution is to make them eat the most disgusting thing imaginable. Despite the gross-out factor, this fecal pharmacy was clinically effective, so they kept prescribing it despite the obvious psychological barriers. Fast forward to modern medicine, and we've discovered that these ancient physicians were absolutely brilliant. Fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT, is now a cutting-edge medical treatment for C. difficile infections, a potentially fatal condition that kills thousands of people annually and is often resistant to antibiotics. The science is mind-blowing. Your intestines contain trillions of beneficial bacteria that help digest food, produce vitamins, and fight off harmful pathogens. When antibiotics wipe out these good bacteria, dangerous organisms like C. diff can take over and literally eat your intestines from the inside out. Fecal transplants restore the healthy bacterial ecosystem by introducing beneficial microbes from a healthy donor. Modern FMT has success rates of 85 to 95% for treating recurrent C. difficile infections, better than most antibiotic treatments. We now perform these procedures through colonoscopy or specially prepared capsules, so patients don't have to actually taste their medicine. But the principle is identical to what Chinese doctors figured out 1,600 years ago. Your ancestors discovered the human microbiome centuries before we even knew bacteria existed. They just had to drink poop soup to access this medical breakthrough. 10 horrifying ancient practices that, against all odds, had genuine medical value. From drilling holes in skulls to drinking liquid mercury to consuming human waste, our ancestors were accidentally pioneering medical treatments that we're still using today. Here's the mind-bending reality. While we were busy thinking we're so much smarter than previous generations, it turns out they'd already figured out antibiotics, microsurgery, pain management, and even advanced gastroenterology. They just had to do it the hard way, without anesthesia, antibiotics, or basic hygiene standards. But here's what I want you to think about. If ancient healers could discover life-saving treatments using nothing but observation and trial and error, what other primitive knowledge are we dismissing? Are there traditional remedies in your family or culture that might actually have scientific merit? I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me. Do you believe ancient medicine was more advanced than we give it credit for? Have you ever tried traditional remedies that actually worked? Use the keywords traditional healing or ancestral medicine in your comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious about your experiences. And if this video made you question everything you thought you knew about medical history, smash that like button and subscribe for more mind-bending content that'll make you see the world differently. Hit the notification bell because trust me, you don't want to miss what twisted historical truths I'm uncovering next. Remember, sometimes the most horrifying treatments are the ones that actually save lives. Maybe our ancestors weren't as crazy as we think. They were just operating with a much higher tolerance for gross-out medical procedures. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.